Hello, and welcome to today's training industry webinar, Develop a Personalized Training Experience with an Intelligent Learning Platform, sponsored by CYPHER Learning. I'm Amanda Longo, and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, as always, a few tips and tricks to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of our time together. Of course, you can pop open your chat window at any time to chat with myself, our speakers, or other attendees. If you have questions for our speakers, we will have an official Q&A section 10 minutes at the end of today's program. So be sure to pop open the Q&A pod and ask your questions there so we can keep them organized for that time. We always encourage you to share the information you receive during our events with your network via social media. Please follow at CYPHER Learning and hashtag #TIWebinars so we're able to track your contribution to the conversation. When our program ends, you'll receive a short evaluation survey, and we would greatly welcome your feedback about today's content, speakers, or topics you might want to see us cover here in the future. And as always, our event will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us that will include a link to the on-demand program as well as a PDF of today's slide deck so you can share that with your team. If this is your first event with us, a very, very special welcome goes out to you. At Training Industry, we offer dozens of events like this each year on subjects ranging from remote learning, data fluency, what makes a great training organization, diversity and inclusion. We cover just about every topic relevant to learning leaders of training organizations around the globe. If you've attended one of our programs in the past, great to have you back. I know today's event is one that you'll find to be most useful, as we will discuss the benefits of using an intelligent learning platform, or an ILP, to deliver training programs customized to fit employees' professional development and role. Awesome. All right, so let's get started with today's awesome triple threat speakers. Alexia Sanchez is an Edtech specialist and instructional design expert at CYPHER Learning, with years of experience working with organizations worldwide to help them implement effective training strategies. Denny St. Lawrence is the Director of Operations at Women in Data, a nonprofit organization focused on increasing diversity in data careers. And Justin Morgan is a technology strategist who partners with chief executive officers, executives, and government leaders to grow their impact and understanding of the use of technology to solve problems human to human. Love that. Can't wait to hear from this triple threat. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the three of you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And again, welcome everyone. We're really excited to be here. So let us start this webinar on how to develop a personalized training experience with an intelligent learning platform. So firstly, I'd like to thank you, Denny and Justin, for joining me today. This is really exciting. And before we actually jump into the topic and we start discussing this, we really want to hear from all of you joining us today. And we really want to understand what you're looking to get from this webinar. So please feel free to share with us your answers on this poll. Amanda, if you can please help us with the poll, thank you very much. So we have different options. For example, how to build a successful learning and development program. You might be interested in hearing some learning strategies that you can also apply to your offerings to learn more about what Women in Data is doing, or how Matrix LMS can help you build your own paths.
All right, everyone, it is our one and only poll of the event. So this is it. This is your chance to sound off, except of course, chatting and asking questions later. But we are wondering, what are you looking for to get out of this event today? I'm going to give our audience a few more moments to post their choices, and I'm going to wrap this poll here in 3, 2, 1. Hope you got your answers in. Here we go.
Excellent, thank you. So, Justin and Danny, I see that many of our attendees are really interested in seeing how they can build a successful learning and development program, which I really think that we have the answer for them.
Yeah, excited to talk about this today with you guys.
Excellent. So let's jump into this. So firstly, I'd like to let you know why Women in Data. I really think that they are doing something amazing with their offerings, and they are really doing an example of what learning and development training is and how they can make it really efficient. I mean, we've been listening in the e-learning industry always about how we can make training and education programs efficient. But how can you really achieve this? That is why we have invited women in data today. And Danny, Justin, I'm going to pass it over to you so that you can please let us know a little bit about your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Alexia. We're proud to partner with Matrix, and we're just so grateful for the work that they do on their platforms. I know you guys probably have many clients who use your platform in multiple ways, but we're a nonprofit organization that helps support women throughout building communities. We also empower them by having classes that they can take to learn and grow their education. But Women in Data was created in 2015 when our founder and CEO, who's also my sister, noticed the lack of women represented in data. And she was concerned about that. And she knew if she felt that lack of community, other women out there felt that as well. So since then, we have shaped Women in Data to a global community, thanks partly to Matrix. And it's a place for data enthusiasts of all backgrounds to connect, grow, and lead together. And Alexia, if you want to go to the next slide. Our journey has not been easy. We started with a 2-woman team, so my sister and I. My sister had the vision of what she wanted Women in Data to look like and to be a safe community, a welcoming community, but also where women can grow in their own strengths and what they're interested in within data. And so it was challenging with the platform that we had been previously using. We were trying to solve a business problem because we know that men outnumber women in data 4-to-1 in most data roles. And so we are trying to solve that problem of how we can see more women in this space. And like I said, we had the vision, but we didn't have the bandwidth. We were using multiple platforms, and it was hard for us to really condense everything we had into one platform. And then that's when we found Matrix.
Yeah, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Betty, but I believe that we've been partnering for almost a little bit over a year. And I think that this has been a great partnership because we're both learning from each other.
Yes, absolutely it has. And you said it correctly. We learn from each other. I know my calls with Helen from Matrix as well. It's more of how can we learn and grow together? And I love to see that collaboration because that's what's behind learning. It's not a teacher or a learner, but you're both learning within those roles. But this was our previous module, as you can see on the screen of first we had Meetup, and that's where our community members were. And then it would be a referral to our website. And that's where we'd host some of our programs, but it was outside of the organization as well. So it was really hard to communicate with members saying, hey, you're in Meetup, but we need you to go and move over to the website. We also had our email set up through MailChimp, and then that would connect them to our membership works, which was the legal referral. And also that's where their member profile was. And then we had Slack as well, which was our kind of community or closed community where we also hosted life coaching. So it was, everything was in bits and pieces all over with our platform that we had. And it was hard to manage our data, let alone understand our members, their interests. We had chapters, in Meetup who needed to know how many members they had. They couldn't even track how many members they had. We had to pull data manually from membership works so we could show the chapter leads in multiple areas, how things were working. So just managing each one of these platforms was a challenge, and it really hindered how we could scale Women in Data. And so that's why we were excited to see Matrix and the things that it can do, condensing all of these things into one bubble and making sure our community doesn't have 4 logins for one, organization, that they can just connect all right within this platform.
Yeah, but what I can tell from this diagram that we're seeing right now is that you already had a vision of what types of elements you wanted in there in your learning, in your learner's journey. For example, I can tell that from Slack, you wanted that community, you wanted that sense of communication, you wanted to have that purposed communication with your learners, and then you also wanted as well continuous information for your learners, plus events and items. So I can definitely understand why you were looking to utilize this. And there's also something important in here that you're mentioning, Danny, and that is, how can we transfer data? How can we collect data from having these separate hubs? So the need of a central hub is completely understandable. And I think that what you had before, this need of connecting all of these different pieces to actually send out, to really create a personalized experience, is really what it is happening right now in the learning environment right now. So since the pandemic, we saw that many corporations, many organizations had a quick need to adapt and to pass it over all into a platform. So everyone had to improvise. They had to move on really fast. So there wasn't a lot of chance about planning things before, prior to this. There was a really quick need to quickly onboard users, to give them all of the tools, because much of the training was happening, it was on the job training. So how can you transfer that over to a platform where you really want not only to see that there's input for the learners, but as well that they are able to find, the employees are able to find whatever they need whenever they need it. And this is the part that takes me as well to what we were discussing earlier, about the input for the learner. I believe that learning and development today, it's still revolving around the input. What do we as an organization want to share with our learners? What do we need for them to know? Instead of really about what is it that we need you to be able to do, how you can face the actual problems, how about what is it that also it's of your interest. And that takes me as well back to that example that JP shared with us some days ago, that he was saying, hey, I think that right now what is happening, it's more about for learners drinking off a fire hose. You know, it's more about the input to the learner, more about to the content, right?
Yeah, I think one of the big issues that we saw was, at least within women in data, is data careers span probably 50 job titles. There's multiple code languages, there's hundreds of tools. And without proper guidance and without having that connection, you really wanted to find a way, at least for us, to create a learning pathway. So not so much throw a content library at our members, but really understand their needs, their personas, their direction, and curate that pathway for success. But I know Denny was really instrumental on this with creating those pathways using Matrix.
Yes, absolutely. And we know here at Women in Data, we know the power of data. And if you're not utilizing your data, which by data, I mean, in this instance, the learner's interests. If you're not utilizing that, your content is not going to be up to date and isn't what your learner wants to see. So you won't see that engagement rising in there. So it's important that you understand your data and that you're utilizing it as well. So when you're thinking of building out a career pathway, the first step you need is to recognize, one, are we collecting data on our learners? And then two, how are we using that? How are we using that to benefit the career pathways that we are going to be making ahead in the future?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that data is highly important because it will really define how well you're calibrating what your learners need really and when they need it, which actually takes me to that example. I mean, many companies right now, many organizations, they're really focused on the number of hours that learners are having over here of what I would call screen use, not really that they're really utilizing that content. It's more about how many hours they spend in the platform, how many hours do they spend reading the content, instead of really taking into consideration some other elements, how really well they are applying those elements. And that takes me as well to the certification. Many organizations are right now just focusing on having their learners go through their programs and awarding them with a certificate and just tracking the number of hours. But I think that there's so much to that. And that actually takes me to talking and discussing what is it exactly that we are seeing right now as a need in today's and in the future's learning and development. And we were discussing this, and so I'd like to circle a little bit back on this, JP and Danny, and how we can talk about how we can really make a program scalable and as well sustainable. Because right now what we're seeing is that it's no longer about how much you memorize, how much you're reading, how many courses you're completing, right? It's more of as well of how well you're mastering those skills, how much you're making that content meaningful to you, because it's not about just passing on the content, right? It's more about transferring those knowledge that are going to be relevant to your job path or to your into your job title or your learning pathway that you have created.
Yeah, I think, and Denny kind of touched on this earlier, and we were very lucky with Denny and Sadie, our CEO. When Denny mentioned business problem, to kind of give some context to that, Women in Data operates in 30 countries and over 50 cities. And pretty much the majority of what we do is remote. So with our goal in mind of increasing women in data careers, we knew that we had to find a way to upskill thousands and thousands of our members, but at the same time recognize that not all of our members are at the same level of education, experience, industry knowledge. So that was kind of the first problem we really had to figure out, was how do we provide content to these members that are engaging, that are not going to burn them out, right? Are going to allow them to have success in this process, and then also apply how it works in the workforce and in their day-to-day job skill transfer. And so what Sadie and Denny were amazing at was they understood that the learning platform was important, but they also needed engagement and community, and that element of having the ability to have study groups, have connections, and really break down the problem into the smallest parts of what we call data personas. So we categorized our learners into 5 personas. So you had new to data, you had data practitioners, data leaders, data citizens, and then when you look at kind of those sections of what we broke it down as, outside the data advocates, we had to figure out, if you've been in data 5 to 10 years, what skills do you usually have? And we went back to our members and said, okay, let's talk to every single member that's been in this industry. What are the core skills you have? What are the core skills you want to learn? So we started, instead of assuming that our content was going to solve the problem, we went to our members and said, hey, what content do you need? What do we need to give you to help you along this path? And if you don't know and we don't know, let's find out together. And that's really how we started solving that problem. And that's where Denny and Matrix were really instrumental in developing those pathways within that platform that allowed us to meet the need of our diverse membership, but at the same time track the progress so we could go back and add the coaching, add the different residency programs at different times to really increase the impact of the programs we were providing.
Right, and I'll also add, what's the role of online learning and development in the future? It's personalization, right? Mm-hmm. Through those membership personas, we can personalize. So Alexia, you're coming in, you're new to data. Great, we know the pathway, we know what you need. JP, on the other hand, he might be already 3 to 5 years involved in this, but he needs some mentorship, or he still wants to upscale his career, and he's happy with where he's at, but he still wants to get that next job and get that higher title. So it's personalization of online learning. So it goes along with the flow of what the learner's interests are, but it also is helping them build out their career.
Yeah, and I think that that is wonderful because really what you're doing is really following a learning in the flow of work, but you're also adding different elements to that to make it really personalized, but that will also actually call to the learner because this is something that it is very interesting, and that is that the brain won't really retain information unless the brain really defines something new as useful, valuable, or that they might use it in the future. So if you're providing with context, which is going to be that sense of community, if you're allowing them to use the knowledge to share, participate, you are also allowing for the learners to create value and to really retain those different content. Plus, additionally, you're also adding mentorship for them to receive feedback. So basically, I would even dare to say that really what you're doing over here is a 360 training program that you're really your learners grow. And there's something as well very important about what we're seeing right now from learning and development in the future and today. What we have also been seeing is that we need to also provide the learners not only with this mentorship as well, but provide them with resources, skills that are relevant. So it takes me a little bit back to Justin, what you were mentioning, and that is the curation of the content. That is going to allow you to have a really relevant and meaningful communication to your learners. Because as Danny, you were mentioning, you were saying, hey, so maybe I'm completely new to the data environment. I will need to start from scratch. But for JP, he's going to be needing something else, something that really drives and calls to his attention. So I really think that this is very important, that part of personalizing the experience for the learners so that we really engage them. I mean, many organizations are always talking about how to make the content engaging. I think that moving away from how to make that content so engaging, adding more content, creating more content, it's more about having a good content governance and really appealing it to the learner's interests and needs. And that will take me over here for you to let us know what are the different elements that you are considering when you are qualifying your learners.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we had this vision in the very beginning. So that our previous platform that you saw, it was all over the place. It was hard to manage. This was our vision originally, and we had this from the beginning. So one, have a vision of where you want to go. So our goal, if we look at the very top right pieces, a new job or hiring title, that's what we want for our members. We want to increase diversity in data careers, and that's either bringing more women into this field or then having them get a higher title within data. So that's our goal. So then we work back from that, right? So how do we do that, right? Well, first, like we mentioned, we need to know where they at. Do you know what skills you need? Okay, great. You know what skills you need. Do you have experience in the industry? If not, we have our residency program for you. That'll gain experience. Now we have portfolio builders, so that'll help them build that out. We have career services so they can get feedback with recruiters so that they can know, okay, what are my options? What company is a good company to work for? And then that's when that the life coaching and then the mentorship gives them that support they need. That way they can go and get that job. But the vision is first. You have to have that vision of where you want to go. And you got to know what's my end goal in mind and work back from that.
Yes, that is completely right, and I think that is also a good strategy. Having really defined a vision, so that then you can define what is going to be your learner's experience map. Sometimes users of LMS platforms come to us and say, "Hey, my program didn't work as expected," and it might be because of the platform, maybe. But in reality, if you don't know where you want to get, you cannot define the process, how those options will work for you. And I think that the key here, and this is something that you were mentioning, Danny, is about focusing on the outcomes. And this also takes me to what Justin was letting me know the other day. And he said, we're focused on basically enabling the learner to set them to success. That is the main focus on this. So you're considering and taking into consideration over here, for example, what we can see is the experience, the interest of the users, their needs. What is it exactly that you're looking from them? I love that you're taking that humane approach that says, hey, what are your skills? But it is not only your current skills, but as well your personality assessment. So I'm going to pass it over to Justin so he can,
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what Denny was stating, which is the business problem. And when you think about that, the way we approach it with content, and we've experienced this with talking with other very large organizations, is their approach is always content first. And the way we look at it as, if you add new content to this model, the first thing our CEO asks, is it content for our library? And how does it apply to our pathway? So it doesn't matter what content we want to provide. We have to demonstrate that it's part of engaging and increasing the success of the pathway. If we can't show that, it doesn't end up in our content library. And the reason why that's important is because when you look at how the majority of what we've seen online learning kind of develop into is really just a library, right? And you can go in, you can search it, you can index it, but there's no guidance, there's no understanding of how it applies. And very few people that we've found when we did our numbers are true self-learners, right? Somebody who can sit in a room, do all the certificates, turn around and apply that to the job. That's not everybody. And so what we try to look at when we're building out our platform is, if we're going to add a new code language, okay, tell me why. Well, it's this important. Okay, now show me where it matches on somebody who's new to the industry. Show me where it matches with somebody who's had 5 years. Tell me why they need this and how it helps us achieve our goal. New job, higher title. How does it apply there? And I think when you start asking that from a business problem, you start to realize that it really is, it really has to be centralized around the learner. And that's the biggest thing organizations are struggling with right now, is because most organizations are compartmentalized. So one part of the organization on the marketing side is like, we need this content. And then you'll have the development team that goes, no, we need this content. So they go, oh, we'll just add it both. Well, now you've added 11 more videos that people have to swim through that may or may not get any value out of it, right? So then they look at the platform and they go, well, people aren't engaged in this, and this. It's like, well, but did you give them a pathway? Did you really help them understand step by step how to get from A to Z? And if you don't, you're really going to struggle with that. And we've seen it a lot of times. I'm sure Denny could comment on this better than I could.
Yes, so you're really providing context for the learner, because if you do not provide any context to how they can get to from point A to point C, they will not understand why the content is relevant, why is it important for them. So they're not really making sense out of the whole program that you're enrolling them. They might comply with it, because that is what many organizations really care about. Just comply. It really doesn't, it is not checking for knowledge comprehension. It is not really checking how, if the employee is really enacting the behaviors, right? So that actually takes me to the part of like, hey, but how are you measuring this, right? And that takes me as well to the part of what are the type of things that we should really care, or that we should really consider to make our training sustainable. I mean, right now, many organizations already have their content. Many already have their programs, and we're not suggesting start from scratch, do a re-engineering of your programs. No, the approach is try to add some elements, and then also think about your plan, your learning experience map. Think about how you want, what is your vision, and try to as well integrate those elements so that each of your content will have a context. And as Justin was mentioning, how you can, how it is going to be relevant to that pathway. How will it align to your different job titles that you might have? So I really think that some of the main characteristics that we've seen right now is having a continuous training that it is aligned to the interests and needs of the learners, making it appealing for the learners. It's not about, I need you to learn this. Personalizing and giving them some autonomy, but also feedback. And this, Denny, you were mentioning how you have mentorship around your different services, which is actually one of your mission statements. And as well, for example, I really like you shared with us this project that you're working on about having learners share with you their resumes to get some feedback and then do this continuous improvement chain, right? So if you can please let us know a little bit more about this, because this is, I believe this is very interesting as well.
Yeah, so the program you're referring to is our career services program, and JP and I had the opportunity to work on this program together. But essentially what it is we saw the need for women. They needed career feedback, or they needed resume feedback, but they also wanted to land a job, but didn't know where to start in that. So we wanted to provide resume feedback. So we gave the opportunity for our members to come to us, give us their resumes, and then we'll review their resume for them. If everything looks great, wonderful, we'll send them along, and then that'll be passed on to recruiters. That way it gives them an opportunity to land the job that they need, or that they have dreamed of. So this is a fantastic opportunity, as you mentioned, to promote that collaboration between the members, the reviewers, and the recruiters, because it's solving, back to what JP was saying, that business problem of recruiters want to hire more diversity within their fields, and not just data, but any fields. They want to find that diversity. So we're solving two problems with one program, and it's great to see that collaboration. But also, not only with that program, but within learning in general, we want our instructors to have that collaborative impact. We also want our members to as well. So we keep our classes small. That way it encourages them to learn from each other, to feel like there's a family, there's a connection. The one thing about online learning is that it can feel so isolating at times, right? And I've taken online classes and I felt like I was the only one in that class, right? Because sometimes you don't even have video calls with each other. So it's just you working through materials. And don't get me wrong, self-paced classes are wonderful. It gives you that flexibility or the hybrid learning that you are looking for, but sometimes it can be very isolating. And so we wanted to remove that feeling and have that collaboration by keeping the cohorts small, but also making sure that members are engaging with each other, that the instructors are reaching out. So that way it feels like you have that accountability as a regular class while it's still an online learning. So that collaboration is key for this.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I think what's important with what Denny's touching on is it's not removing the human element. And if you just think about it from a resume standpoint, if anybody in here has ever done a resume, you send it to somebody you know to review it, right? I mean, unless you're amazingly confident. I know I'm not. So I send it to like 5 people and have them review it and try to get that feedback of, okay, does it look good? Am I saying the right things? Do I need to change it? And what we've tried to do in our organization, from resume review to our coursework to our coaching, is constantly have that human connection within our membership. We have study groups. We have, for almost every class we provide, there's a study group. So there's a place where people can go to connect and say, hey, I'm not picking this up. I'm not really understanding it. But it also gives an opportunity for the members who really have a grasp on it to communicate with members who don't and say, hey, I get it. I was stuck there too. Let me kind of help you along that pathway. And what that does is it increases the encouragement of your learner to continue down that pathway. And that's when you think about sustainability, you think about how do you continue to have your people engaged in this process. And what we find is that when you create that community within your platform, you get an amazing amount of engagement. You really do. And you get that feedback, you get that flexibility of, hey, we have members in Africa, we have members in APAC. Well, they connect with people all over the world now. We have study groups with people all over the world, that will set time that works for both parties just to go over a SQL class. And it's amazing to see it, but it happens organically if you give them the opportunity to do it. And that's really something that Denny and Matrix have done an amazing job of collaborating on and developing for this organization.
And definitely you can define safe spaces for your learners, because that is what we've noticed. You know, when you open a big forum with lots of people, it's really hard for them to be motivated to post, to share their ideas, but you're giving them a safe environment where they feel okay with sharing elements. I think that is a great idea, because you can create different spaces at the course level, or perhaps it's going to be for the whole pathway, moments where learners can also reset from all of this information, share, and make sense out of all this input as well. So definitely that is the part of the social learning elements that we can already start implementing in this pathway, in this experience. That is why the learning experience map is called. It is a user experience. It's not only like, hey, you go through these inputs, these modules. No, you go as well through this experience. You get these moments where you can interact, that you can communicate, and what you're doing is that you're empowering your learners through that. So I really think that is something that it is wonderful about your program. And as well, I think that all of these social learning elements can connect as well to that pathway if you are making it relevant. Again, I believe we've been mentioning the word relevant, where we really want to do that. We really want to make sure that we're understanding the day-to-day challenges and what really the learner will need for them to perform their job, how to address different situations, because that is something that the platform can do. We can set many automation rules. We can trigger recommendations for continuous upskilling that will be aligned to their needs, to their areas of opportunities, and as well to what is it exactly that they're interested in, because you're using a tagging system that will always align with that. But as well, it's what you're really wanting for your learners to be able to do. If you're talking about creating a network where you're sharing information, but you are also getting recommendations, you're really making something sustainable, because it is diverse, it has inclusion, and it has continuous communication, which I think that you as women in data have been able to master pretty well. And I would like to pass it now to over here. What is it about the learner's interests and needs that we should consider? And I believe that women in data have been able to include all of this. So for example, the social learning, you were mentioning about how you can do a network, but it is also about sharing and the mentorship, or the skills, how you're also doing the part of measuring exactly what is it that they need. And here, Justin, you mentioned the other day that organizations should really try and capture whether learners are leveling up to make it scalable. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's something to really measure and understand, especially if you're looking big picture. With what's been going on with the pandemic and the Great Resignation, a lot of organizations now are really trying to figure out, how do we take the people we have and give them the skills they need to help us as an organization move forward, adopt more technology, be more advanced in the workplace. And that's a really big challenge. And so what we tried to do, looking at it internally for what we do, we took a very amazing approach. Denny is amazing at this, was really understanding how to measure where people are, developing a bridge of comprehension of what they know right now and how does it apply to what they need to know in the future. What are those correlations? What makes sense that allows them to see why this is important? Celebrating what their success is, not just as an individual, but within the community that they're operating in. giving them the recognition to say, hey, keep going, like this is really good, having those resources and making sure that they all align with your goal, which is the end, the finish line of your learning pathway, right? But I think Denny, being the mastermind of designing this, I really feel, Denny, you probably are the best person to talk about this in this space.
Yeah, and it goes back to those member personas like we mentioned, and those personas might be different for your organization. Obviously, ours is tailored towards data, but it's key to find what is your learner interested in, and then also what do they need, right? But that's helpful because Matrix then has their tagging system, so we can tag, okay, so now Alexia is a newbie, right? So now we know what social learning, we need to get her connected with mentorship so that she doesn't feel left out within the portal, right? That's a key part of, you want people to stay engaged on your platform, you need people on your platform engaging. That's key there. But then also those skills. So what skills does she need in that moment? Because like JP mentioned earlier, there's so much content out there, and in being content-based, there's a lot of downsides of, you can just be overwhelmed with how much content is within your catalog. But if you have those personalized recommendations, hey, Alexia, we saw you took Introduction to Python. Here's intermediate Python now for you, now that you just completed this, right? So making sure that's that continuous development, those recommendations as well, but also providing resources as well on your platform. So all of these are a good step into knowing what are the interests of the learner.
Yeah, definitely. You were mentioning the other day, Danny, about how this takes us to a foundational shift, right? Where you're really driven by those learners with your personas in mind. And I think that the success rate of a learner to keep on going through their progress, it's going to be definitely higher than just going through the whole just the pieces of the content, because you're not bridging gaps, you're not really getting them engaged. So it doesn't really call to that humane part that you were saying, right? So I really like how you, Women in Data, has been able to really consider that empathic approach to really make it humane, to really make it revolve around what really the learners will need.
Yeah, and that goes back to having a plan, right? So in the beginning, we had a plan. We saw a vision of what we wanted. And you mentioned, Alexia, you have clients sometimes come to you and say, hey, we want this, but we don't really know how to achieve it. Okay, that's great. You need to already go back. You need to go through step one again, which is have a plan. What's my goal in mind? What do I want our learners to do, right? And then it's also knowing your audience, knowing your learners' interests and what they need. So having that minimal viable product, which by that I mean like a kind of a skeleton of what you want. So building that out within the portal, and then from that you can get more on the product or more on your courses once you get that feedback from your learner. Okay, they're loving this course. This is great for the newbies. This is great for the practitioners. This is what we need to keep building, because you're wasting your time by just putting out content, and half of the courses don't even apply to your learners. So we're trying to avoid as much possible stress for you as the portal management. So having that minimal viable product is key, but then also understanding Matrix is your toolbox. Like, you guys are best. I either say you guys are like our best friends, because we provide feedback for you, you provide feedback for us, in understanding, hey, here's what we want this to do. Can we do this? And then you guys come back and say, yep, perfect. This is how we're going to go through that. So identifying what you want to do through your KPIs. And so once you have your product, once you have your goal in mind, okay, now what do we want it to do? And then have that long-term strategy, but also checking in on that strategy weekly or monthly, because it's great to have goals, but if you never check in on them, it's not gonna be a project. We all have a goal of getting fit and eating better, but if you don't keep constantly checking in on that, it's not going to happen. So it's important that you check in on those goals and adjust, be flexible, because what you have in mind and what the learner needs might be two different things. It still will be on track for your goal, but how you get there is going to be differently. And that's where it goes back to the feedback is key from you guys who are managing the portal, but also from your learners. So listen to them, and that's data as well. Feedback is data, you got to invest in the learner.
Yeah, 100%, Denny. And I think one thing for anybody out there that's working within organizations, I'd say the biggest thing that we've learned from our CEO is break out your org chart. Really just look at the org chart and look at the stages of progression, right? Of, entry level all the way to your C-suite executive. Those are your stages of growth for your learner, right? That's really what it is. And then you have to define that your learner is going to be in one of three spaces. Either they want to grow within the space they're in, they want to grow within the organization they're in, or they're just naturally curious. And once you really define those personas, you can really help drive that, because for your members or your learners that are curious, feed that curiosity, right? For your members or your learners that really want to grow and be the best in the position they're in, understand what that position needs, feed that need, right? And if they're like, hey, I want to be CEO one day, okay, well, then you're probably going to need a little bit more of a different learning pathway than the learners who just want to be really awesome at what they do and stay in that space. Because I think everybody here knows that it takes a combination of skills to be successful in any one thing. It's not just really understanding, at least for the data space, like, oh, I'm a master of Python or SQL. Yeah, that's great. But do you know how it impacts our business? Do you understand how it interacts with how we operate? And so it's really, like Denny said, be engaged, really understand what your learners are trying to get out of this exercise, because it is selfish for them, right? They're doing it so they can improve and get better. So find ways to connect those dots, build that bridge. And then, like Denny said, data, measure everything and keep measuring it. Because eventually, if you know what you're looking for and you know why you're measuring something, you're going to find the feedback you need to either continue down that pathway or adjust to increase success. So I think Denny pretty much covered it all, though. Nice job.
And one last note is, like that last point says, you must inspire the learner. You as that learning portal, you're an influence on them, right? You are influencing their lives, hopefully for the better, in upscaling their career in that learning. So take that as a gift, right? That you get to impact someone's life. And how are you doing that? Are you doing that successfully?
Well, thank you very much, Justin and Denny, for sharing those insights with all of us. I really think that, as you were mentioning, data is really important for all of the different processes that are going on in an organization, because that is actually what it is going to drive continuous improvement. Quality systems, it's the same. You need to measure in order to really understand how well you're enabling your employees, how well, if they're really upskilling or not, and definitely as well making the platform and all of the Edtech tools that you might be utilizing your allies. Remember that technology is going to facilitate things for you. So definitely that is another thing. The only thing is knowing what is it that you like so that you can translate that into the best usage of the platform. So again, thank you very much, Justin and Denny. And Amanda, maybe we can go now into the Q&A. So let's start with the questions. So they're asking how to create my private teaching platform. Lasmar, thank you very much for your question. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to share with you over here, over the Q&A. We're going to be sharing with you this link so that you can go and visit us and you can sign up for a free trial. And also, if you can please reach out to the email address that I'm also typing in here. And we will be able to further assist you with this with these steps, the next steps. And there's a really interesting question, Denny and Justin, if you can help me as well, provide some feedback too. And it is what I should focus on first to get that personalized learning experience.
Yeah, I think it's just identifying that plan, right? Starting from the basics. So before you get onto a platform or start looking for a platform, understand what's my goal in mind, and who's my target audience? Who am I looking to have feedback from? So I think that's the first step, is having that plan first.
Yeah, I think you know, it's really important to look at it from a business standpoint, and really understand your business use case. You're going to understand that better than your learners. That's why you're willing to share this information with them. What you need to understand is, why do they need it? And how are you going to help them get to where you feel they need to be to find that success, and work backwards? How did you get there? What did you learn? What were the things that you found most valuable? What were the things that you realized were a big waste of time for you? And draw that roadmap out. And then decide, okay, in that roadmap, how do I get somebody who's never understood this subject ever to get to where I'm at today? What does that take? And then decide, are there people who have similar aptitudes, understandings of this subject? So start building your personas, right? Because the first persona is easy. They've never done it before. So start with that persona and draw the roadmap to go, if I've never done this before, I know nothing about it, to end result, I am an expert in my field and I'm, you know, successful in this. Build that roadmap first. And then from there, build all the variables. Okay, well, maybe you have a little bit of experience in it. Maybe you're really experienced in it and you're transitioning. But once you do that, it'll really help you lay out the plan for, what do I need to do? And then how do I use this amazing toolbox called Matrix to help me build out that plan on that platform? And that's going to drive a lot of success for what you do and help you save a lot of time.
And I would like to add to this, circling back to what Danny was saying, inspire. How can you transfer passion? Not only the knowledges, but how you can transfer that passion for what they're doing, what they're learning, what they're going to be needing as well. So think about social learning elements. Think about moments where the learner will have this meaningful recognition that Danny was able to really translate it into their programs through a community. So those are as well elements to consider when you're planning as well.
All right, we've still got a few more moments and a few more questions coming in. So I'm going to keep hitting the team with them, since I know we've got a lot of brain power on the line, as demonstrated over the last 45 minutes. This question came in from Agnes, who's wondering, and this is a common question we get at training industry webinars, wondering how you evaluate training efficiency. What kind of tips do you have?
Well, I would start by saying that it really depends on your KPIs. We have organizations that are really doing it through what we call competency-based learning, through mastery. How well your learners are really acquiring those skills in assessment or practice moments. So it also correlates to the number of processes that they have been doing. But as well, it really goes back into what we were mentioning about saying how you're going to measure that type of process. I'm going to pass it over to women in data so they can also share their experience.
Yeah, I think that's important. I also love that Matrix has, with every course, with every training that you provide, you can have, after they take the training, surveys. I think that's very valuable. A lot of companies don't utilize that. And surveys is collecting data. The data then can be seen, whether it's negative or positive. That's a great feedback to have, of seeing that efficiency through that training. So taking the feedback from your learners is key also, to see, hey, is this training going well? What parts did you enjoy? What parts did you enjoy? What do we need to cut out? Like, what, I already knew this, why is it in here, right? So that's important to find what their needs are and then see that through the training.
Yeah, I think, Denny, you hit it right on the head. And you said this earlier at the beginning of this webinar. You have to embrace the shared learning experience, right? So you're not going to get it right the first time. It's very hard to. So are you willing and open to be okay to fail? Be okay to, hey, I put this class out because I think it's the best class, but you get, 25 people give a survey at the end and they go, this was terrible. right? Well, okay, well, why was it terrible? Help me understand how to improve on that, right? And what you'll find is as you get more feedback, as you start to deal with these learners more actively, that you develop a sense of trust. They're going to be really open and honest with you, and you get to really be open and honest with what you're providing and how it's affecting the learner. And that's so important. And that was, Denny's been amazing at that. She was talking to pretty much every member that we had at one point, just, hey, how can we improve this? What are we not doing right? What can we do better? What can we do different? And would come back to the team and we'd all break it all down and go, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't provide this, or maybe this is a waste of time, or you know what, we really need this. Let's go back and look at this again and remeasure how we're doing this. So I think Denny was 100% spot on, is you have to be able to measure the honesty and feedback from your learners to improve.
And also one more note on that is then it shows that your learners, that you care about them, you know, that, hey, we value enough that we want to know what your feedback is. And that's why our chapter leads are so important, is because they have a pulse on that local community. I don't know what's going on with our Berlin chapter. I'm not right there connected to it, right? So it's important to have that feedback from them, but it also shows, hey, we value you, we care about you, we want this to be for you. This space, this community, these programs are for you. We're not here to, we think our programs are really great and you should take them. No, these are built and tailored for you. They're personalized.
Yeah, we're invested in the shared success.
I love that. I think honestly, that's how you tell a really savvy, thoughtful, a technology-focused company, is that they realize that, yeah, there's lots of magic in data and in tech, but without the human component and element, can you really see it through to, you know, the utmost success? So I love that answer. Let's try and squeeze in this last question that came in from Clement. Is there a way to qualify your persona, identifying the level of knowledge of your experience, or the experience level, or even the learner's interest in the training program before creating it?
Do you want me to jump on this one, Denny?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So I think one, you have to identify the use case, right? So from a business standpoint, are they learning to upskill in a current position for a job? Are they learning something totally different? But if, let's say, use an organization, I would go back to, you really got to identify the hierarchy, right? So to understand what somebody needs to learn means you have an idea of where they're trying to go. So you have to start with, where do you start in the beginning? Where do you start at the end? And then break out the phases, right? So we know as just from basic education, the stuff you learn in second grade is different than the stuff you learn in fourth grade, right? But what you're trying to do is get somebody to graduate high school, right? The end goal is to get there and then eventually to, you know, higher education. So it's completely mapped out. It's linear. Right. So I would say start to define your linear process of progression. Really look at, okay, well, here's what I'm teaching, right? But is what I'm teaching, go look at your, and this is a hard exercise, but I would say this will be fun for you. Go and look at your whole library and categorize it by stage in career. Mm-hmm. It'll mess you up. Like it's so frustrating. We've done it. And you'll go, well, I've got, 65 videos or learning programs that are all expert level. I've got 3 videos for entry level. Why is nobody progressing? It's like, well, that's probably why, right? So you really have to break it down like Lego blocks, right? And just build that linear process. And then once you do that, then you can look at the learner and go, okay, what are my learners, right? When people are coming in, get that feedback. What are you trying to learn? Where are you at in that progression? And we do that very well. Women in Data, when you come in as a member, and Denny, you could speak to this, you could kill this. You take a personality assessment and a skills assessment. It's the first thing you do before you do anything else is, what do you know and what are your proclivities? What do you care about? And then once we know that, we have a starting point, because we know what we want to teach you, but we need to know what you need to learn. And Denny, I know you designed most of that. So would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, it was great building that out. That's also too the brain of Matrix as well, because any ideas that we have, it comes to fruition because of Matrix. So I just want to thank you guys for all the hard work that you do. And I know Alexia has been behind that too as well. But it's been so wonderful to see how it's progressed for our learners just because we care about their interests and their needs. So when they first sign up, as JP mentioned, that's what they take as a skills and assessment test. So that way we can accurately know, hey, where are you coming at? Because we don't want to waste your time. If you're at an intermediate level and you're already beginning at, taking beginning classes, that you're wasting your time. And we know time is valuable for you because for most of our members, again, looking at the data, they already have a full-time job. This is something on the side that they can do and they want to learn and grow so that way they can change their jobs. But they might be full-time moms as well. So they have maybe 5 to 10 hours a week, right? So we got to squeeze in as much valuable time as we can and not waste their time in that. So we understand that our members are our first priority, and understanding their interests and their needs so we can provide that training is a wonderful thing that we can do within our organization, thanks to Matrix.
Yeah,
Well,
and definitely
go ahead.
Matrix is going to be your favorite ally, because what we're here to do, what we really intend to do, is to leverage and enhance your training programs that we will, we're not selling just a product, we're also selling a partnership with you, that we will try and help you achieve your goals.
I love it. I'm always proud to be a producer here on Training Industry Webinars because we find the most passionate, intelligent speakers for our events. And today was no exception to the rule. You could feel the passion from this team, and we just love to see that here for our events. Thank you so much, Alexia, Justin, and Denny, for taking some time out to put this presentation together and come and deliver it to our audience. We really appreciate you doing this and taking some time for Q&A today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda. And we were happy to speak on Matrix's behalf. Like you mentioned, we're passionate about this, and we're passionate about speaking about Matrix because they're a wonderful resource for your organization as well.
Love it.
Thank you again, Justin and Danny. This has been a really insightful presentation, and thank you for sharing those insights with our attendees today.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us.
All right, everyone, that wraps up today's event. Of course, you can always catch us at more events in the future, trainingindustry.com/webinars for all that information. Today's program, as well as all of our programs, do pre-qualify you for 1 credit hour by ISPI, SHRM, HRCI, and CPTM. What is CPTM? It's the Certified Professional and Training Management Program. If you're looking to up your personal and professional game by linking your learning initiatives to your organizational goals, this is a program perfect for you. You can join us from anywhere in the world. Check out cptm.com. Of course, we'd love to have you join us for our upcoming Leader Talk. Our next theme in April is digital transformation and the future of work. Who doesn't need to talk about that? One more time, I'd like to say a big round of thanks to CYPHER Learning, and of course, to today's 3 awesome speakers, Alexia, Justin, and Denny. It was a great show. And of course, thanks to all of you for attending. Training Industry loves to see you back here for learning whenever you'd like. Check out the website, and we will see you here again in the future. Until then, enjoy it out there. Bye-bye now.